I do enjoy cricket. I mean, you talk about Test cricket. I mean, I think as I've gotten older, it's become more and more my favorite. Not just my favorite form, but one of my favorite sports.
Yeah.
I think there's more time as you get older to appreciate the various little elements of Test cricket. And I've said this to Harry before. You often hear about the fear of the future of Test cricket, and the thing I often say to that, particularly my background is in British government, is all Test cricket needs to do is hold on for about 25 years, because AI and roboticization will mean that most people don't have jobs. And they're going to need those 5 days. They're going to need something to take up their time. And Test cricket, as you know, is an aristocratic sport. It came about because you had a bunch of British aristocrats who didn't work for a living, and they need something to take up their time. And I think Test cricket is basically going the same way. If it survives for about another 20 years, it's going to be the sport of choice. I'm convinced.
Fingers crossed, hopefully. But thanks again, guys. I mean, it's really appreciate all your time and effort, of course, for making this possible. This, of course, is a cricket podcast, the first episode that we're going to do much more and talk, of course, all things cricket. This week, we're going to be talking about, and shall I say, stoking a great debate. And I think the pun says enough over there. Of course, we're going to be joined in by fine minds, as you guys can see. Harry Bell, who takes his pub Sunday cricket very seriously, joining us from Germany right now. Harry?
I don't know about very seriously. I take the pub bit more seriously than the cricket bit.
All right. Rakib Islam, nice to see you for the first time. And I'm guessing you're somewhere in the UK, aren't you?
Yes, I'm in London.
All right. And loving the summer so far. We've got some cricket in.
I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, so I'm an Indian fan, but this has been the first time I can sit down and watch England for the first time in years, just watch them play Test cricket, and it's been such a brilliant series. I have to say, I'm absolutely relishing watching the third Test on Friday, which hopefully we're going to talk about soon.
Yeah, for sure. And Bishan Jashwant, of course, the man who knows it all and who's been with me in this journey for a while right now, and looking nice in that West Indian kit. I'm guessing that was your trip from Jamaica not too long ago.
That's right. That's from watching the India-West Indies test in Jamaica last year. And so you know who I'm supporting in this third test coming up.
So guys, let's start with that third test because Rakib brought it up. It's poised so perfectly. West Indies win. They, of course, win after 32 years, is it, on English soil. And they, of course, retain the Wisden Trophy. But you look at how England have bounced back in that second test. It was remarkable. One man in particular, Ben Stokes. We'll get to him in a bit. But first, I want to just touch upon that third test. Bishan, we'll start with you. From a West Indian point of view, Jason Holder has done absolutely everything he could in this series. But the English have fought tremendously well in that second test to make it level. So having said all of that, where do you see this third test meandering into?
Yeah, so I think West Indies have already surpassed expectations by winning a test in the series.
Yeah.
And 1-1 is already, to some extent, a success. I know the West Indies camp won't look at it like that. But from a neutral perspective, 1-1 is already a success. And there's a good chance the series will end 1-1 as well, considering rain is forecast for the last test. It's scheduled to be a huge part. So you could have the series finishing at 1-1. And you're right. Jason Holder has done everything right, but you expected England to come back strong, and they had an extremely good second test. They had to fight really hard to win because the game was meandering towards a draw. They had to really make things happen, and they did. You don't expect any less from Joe Root, Ben Stokes, and co. And going into that last test, lots of interesting things about selection, really, because England can keep playing a different bowling attack every match, like they did Test 1 and Test 2. And who will they now play in Test 3? I'd be interested to see Broad and Anderson bowling in tandem. You don't get to see that a whole lot. You may not get to see that a whole lot going forward. So I'd like to see that happen in the third test. The rest of the attack, I think, picks itself. Dominic Bess has been extremely good. And of course, Jofra Archer must come back into the squad. So some interesting selection bits there. But overall, looking forward to the third test.
Yeah, I mean, Rakib, we touched upon England's bench strength really in the last one, which we did. And it's remarkable to see how they have two tearaway fast bowlers in Mark Wood and Jofra Archer.
Yep.
Archer, of course, missed out, unfortunately, for the second test, but he's back fresh for this one. Do you see the same sort of 11 being picked? Because some might say we beat the same side and the same venue as such. Why change anything?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you have to bring in Archer. I think on that last day, West Indies could have easily batted that out. And I think what they really missed in that last day was that pace.
Yeah.
And they missed someone who could hit it hard on the length and put in those bounces. I think that Mark Wood he's a skiddy bowler. He's not quite as tall. So he works much better in, I suspect, Australia and South Africa, where, of course, he was brilliant not too long ago. But Archer, I think these pitches have shown that they do deaden a bit over the fifth day, especially when you get to the fourth and fifth day. And I think that if Archer had been playing in that last test, they would have wrapped that up quite a bit earlier. I do think there's an issue with their spinner. I know you, Bishan, you talked about Best.
Yeah.
But I felt he wasn't taking wickets. I mean, yes, he did keep the scoring rate down a bit. But I think England also need to, if they want to do something in this Test Championship, they have to look for a wicket-taking spinner. And actually, I would suggest, given their frailties in batting, that I would shoot for Mo Ali. Actually, okay. I think that he can offer something similar.
Yeah.
He can be an attacking spinner, and obviously he can bat.
What about the thought of Jack Leach? Because of course, many people saying that Jack Leach creates that little rough around for the left armer from the other end. Harry, we didn't see that much in the second test. Do you think the English missed a trick there?
So one thing that we certainly did see from that second test, there was a lot of conversation about that West Indies batting lineup. Very right-hand based, except for the opener.
Yeah.
And that probably does favour a left-handed spinner like Leach, who can get the ball spinning away and create more chances. On top of that, though, with Ali, it feels like he's had his test sabbatical, and he hasn't had a chance to play any first-class cricket. He's not a part of the setup. I expect he's going to have a good go in one day, and I like him as a test player, batting 7 and bowling, and he's won a test at Old Trafford on the 5th day against India in staggering conditions. I went up and there was so much rain, and then from nowhere he managed to take a bag full of wickets. But for me, I wouldn't be surprised if Leach came in for Bess. Obviously, Bess is substantially younger, so he's quite promising moving forward, but it'll be an interesting sort of dilemma.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because, like you touched upon there, the fact that he does cause a little problems more to the right-handers with that angle, and West Indies have 10 out of 11 right-handers, barring John Campbell. So from a bowling perspective, I think England, like Pishan said, you can really pick and choose because you have such great options. I'm sure James Anderson will like to get in the thick of things, considering it's his venue, his end pretty much. So he would like to definitely have his say in terms of the series poised so precariously, shall I add. Now, Ben Stokes is a man that is on everyone's lips. He, of course, made that move in the ICC Test rankings and so on and so forth. Harry, we'll start with you with Ben Stokes. Is he one of the greatest that we're seeing in the making, or is he already there yet?
For me, he's such an entertaining player to watch, and he can win you a test match. And England have got a few of those players. Root came out and said that we had the making of a great who was at the peak of his powers, and it's hard to say otherwise. I mean, the way that he performed in that test match was excellent, and then also throughout last summer, it was he's encouraging a lot more British people to get into cricket, which is very exciting. But yeah, with the ball, with the bat, with the field, everything was on point, I think, for that last test match.
Rakib, I'll come to you. Bishan, let me ask you this, because when we talk about Ben Stokes and his journey, especially in the last 5 years, it's been ups and downs. That 2016 World T20 final in Kolkata, to come back from that. And then, of course, that pub brawl, which really tarnished his reputation a little bit. Then coming back into the scheme of things, 2019 was brilliant. Getting the captaincy, 3 weeks ago for that first test. There's lots of things which have kind of transpired in Ben Stokes' career so far, especially in the last 18 to 24 months. Where does he go from here? Because we talk about the great all-rounders, your Kapil Devs, your Imran Khans, your Jack Callises. Where does he really rank in the pantheon of great all-rounders?
I think he's already made a case to say that he has reached that pantheon.
Yeah.
Because not many people over their long careers would have done the kind of things he's done over the last 1 year, whether it was the Ashes or the World Cup. So you can say that the sample size is small and his career is not long enough, but there's some of the things that he has done give him the right to claim that he's right up there. And I think from the last test, a small thing that you gain is the guy is really adaptable and he understands situation. He's not a slam bang cricketer. While of course he is that as well, because he's extremely successful T20 leagues across the world. But the way in which he played the first innings and the second innings required two completely different roles to be performed, and he did them to perfection. Correct. Right? Two times in the test. And what you expect from a bowler or from an all-rounder is someone who can win you the match with the bat and with the ball equally. And most players are either a batting all-rounder or a bowling all-rounder. And with Stokes, I don't know if you can say that, because he really is a genuine all-rounder. He could be picked in purely for his batting and maybe to a slightly lesser extent, but you could pick him purely for his bowling as well. Right? So he's a genuine true all-rounder. And I'm not sure if you saw that video that's been doing the rounds part of the last game, where he bowled the ball and then ran all the way back to the boundary to feel the same ball.
I mean, that's just brilliant. That just sums up Stokes, really, isn't in that one.
You can expect that anyone at the international level would go and try to field it. Nobody would just stand at their bowling mark. But the fact is that Stokes had the determination to get there. And even after he got there, he put in a full-length dive to put that ball back in. It shows the heart of the guy, It's only one small...
Absolutely. I think the last time I've seen this in a cricket field, funnily enough, was someone who was like him, which is Freddie Flintoff. I think Dravid kind of punched an on-drive off, and there was no one in mid-on, and then Flintoff just went chasing back. So it brought back all those memories. Rakib, let me come to you now, because you talk about the great all-rounders, like the names we mentioned over there. Jack Callis is, of course, statistically the best that we've seen in terms of a test match player, all-rounder, so on and so forth. But when we talk about that talismanic push that Stokes had, or Bishan just referred to, is that I want to go win this game for my team. We didn't see that with Callis. I mean, no disrespect to any South Africans watching this, but you just feel that with Stokes, that he wears the heart on the sleeve much more. He's so committed, 120% maybe. So do you think that's the X factor he has over all these other greats?
I mean, not all these other greats, because I would say someone like an Imran Khan had that X factor in spades. But the thing about Stokes is and I think actually more generally in cricket, we don't really have a stat for that X factor, that winning capability. For someone like for India, I would be looking at Virender Sehwag. How much extra would his average be if you took into account he could win you a game in a session? And I think that's really what Stokes has done over the last 2 years. I think prior to about 2018, I thought he was heavily overrated. But I think over the last 2 years, particularly actually, I think a real key growth moment for him was losing that final in the way that he did against the West Indies. I think he went to the IPL after that as well. And I think the way he deals with pressure since then has just changed him. I think he's the best cricketer in the world today. I think it's hard to argue otherwise. He bowls well, he bats well, he fields well, he's a talisman. But I mean, I'm not quite there yet to call him one of the greats, because I would say he's only done it for 2 years. And some of the players that you're talking about have done it for 5, 6, 7 years. I also, even as an India fan, someone who's born in England, we do slightly overrate English, Indian, Australian cricketers, because they get all the publicity. Because I would say, Harry knows this. I think that Jason Holder has actually been just as good as him over the last 2 years. His bowling and the fact that he's been a test captain that's brought up that West Indies team from the worst 20 years of their history is something that I feel that doesn't
I second that thought. I absolutely second that thought, because the thing is, take a look at Holder, because he's a kind of character who slips under the radar. I mean, you take a look at his bowling statistics, like you pointed out, in the last 12 months, has been absolutely brilliant. And the fact that he's so accurate and consistent with his spells and managing his troops, like you said, is brilliant. But let's talk about Stokes, the batsman, right now, Harry, because we talk about him propelling himself to the number 3 ICC rankings in the world. There's Kohli, there's Smith, of course, there's Williamsons, there's Joe Roots, there's all these kind of guys who go around. For him to be the best batsman in the world, do you think that's a little far-fetched, or do you think that can be achieved? Or if that is achieved, he needs to bat higher up the order?
The big moment for me with the batting in that last test was in the final innings, where Stokes was in with Root, and Root ran for the single and Stokes just stood his ground And for the last few years, we have been talking about Kohli, Williamson, Smith, and Root as the big four top Test players. And to see an England captain there knowing that he had to sacrifice himself there, you kind of knew that Stokes is starting to elevate himself as a batsman and his importance in those key moments.
Yeah.
So for me, I just wanted to keep seeing him work on his batting. I prefer watching him bat to his bowling. And we've spoken about him as an all-rounder with quality in both areas, but certainly with the Holder comparisons, he doesn't match up in the bowling, but his average has really been getting better over the last couple of years, and he's clearly working on it. Yeah. But yeah, as far as a batting player, I've seen him dig in, and you can also see him play those expansive shots. He's almost got that KP edge about him. That innings that he played down in South Africa, the rapid 200 was, it was encapsulating. It was a Saturday morning. English people were just getting out of bed, making some breakfast, having a bit of tea, and you flick the TV on. You're like, Christ!
Yeah,
it's only been an hour, but yeah, I think he's a proper entertainer, and I think he's very good for Test cricket, certainly for engaging young people in the UK.
So what about Stokes? When we take a look at his age right now, 30, there was a lovely article which came out in an Indian newspaper which showed the comparison between the other all-rounders and how he kind of fares with them right now. But you take a look at what Bishan mentioned. He mentioned the word adaptable. You look at that second innings, for example, scoring the fastest 50 for an English opener, and you wouldn't really imagine Ben Stokes' name to fit alongside that stat, but he's got it all right. Is this what sets him apart from the other all-rounders? We speak about Holder, we speak about maybe a Ravi Jadeja, maybe a Colin de Grandhomme. They haven't really established those heights like a Stokes has, but how long can he do it for, Bishan? Because that's really the question here. Because we talk about Virat, we talk about all these other greats in the game, and we always inevitably ask them how long can they go on for. He's had 2-3 years of absolute brilliance. Do you see this last for another 4 or 5 years, or maybe more?
I don't see why not. I mean, the amount of cricket players play these days is, of course, a factor in determining their longevity. But at the same time, players are also much fitter these days than they were in the past. So, and someone like Ben Stokes is clearly extremely fit, and I don't see why not. Even like it comes to me back in the 80s, someone like Imran Khan, over a period of I think 5-6 years between 83 and 89, the guy averaged 50 with the bat and 20 with the ball. And if it's possible for someone in the 80s to do it, and someone like Ben Stokes today he's not reached those heights yet, but he's getting there, and I don't see why he can't sustain this for a longer period of time with his level of fitness. And I'm sure England have good resources with them as well, and so they can manage workload to the extent necessary to ensure that their best players serve them for the longest possible time, play in the key games. So they'll have to be a little bit sensible about it, I guess, but I don't see logically why he won't be able to do this for a few more years.
All right, fair enough. We'll end the Ben Stokes chat there, but the next chat we're going to talk about is something a little bit fun for you guys watching this, because I requested the lads out here. Oh, 1 second. Sorry, Rakib, you want to come in?
Yeah, I'm just going to make one point on Ben Stokes, because it's a point that we often make for top players around the world. Kohli, if we're being brutally honest, didn't get the ratings he did until he did that fantastic series in 2018 in England. Stokes, and I would say England's greatest challenge is in India these days. Yeah. And Stokes hasn't had that key series in India yet. And for me, whether it's as a batsman or a cricketer, to be the greats, you have to do it in a place where your country is usually traditionally weak. And so I would say, I think it's a 2021 in January, right? Where supposedly, are they going to India? Yeah. Or are we in England?
Yeah, no, I think it's later for 2021 Jan. Yeah, you're right.
That is absolutely key for him and his legacy. If he wants to be a great, he has to go to a place like India and be dominant there as well.
Well, like a KP in 2012, or for example, even 100%. Down under, because you take a look at how England have fared, apart from that 2010-11 draw. I mean, I think if Stokes goes there and, really wins the Ashes by himself, that's when he really puts himself and stamps his authority, like you said. But I'm interested to see if any of you all have Stokes in your 11s here, because what we're going to do now is, of course, discuss our all-time England and West Indies 11s, and this is post-2000. We can, of course, talk about great names of the 80s and 90s, maybe the 70s and 60s as well. but this is for the modern cricket fans. So let's start with our teams and let's see how we do this. So Harry, do you want to go with your openers and tell me what's your best Test England West Indies openers post 2000? It's a little tongue twister, but go through it.
Certainly with the openers, we've already spoken about the last 20 years have not been great for the West Indies, and unfortunately that's reflected in my team. I've gone with Cook and Strauss.
Okay.
Both solid openers and good captains, potentially great captains for England, both Ashes winning captains.
No Twiscott?
No.
Okay, fair enough. We can't hold on to your team there because I want to see the other openers in the camp as well. Rakib, what's your opening lineup for this one?
So whilst I actually agree with him more broadly, and I was going for something similar, someone who always gets forgotten, and he plays for the West Indies, and actually he averages similar to Vaughan, Trescothick and Strauss, but he averages over 40 both home and away, which those other three don't, is Chris Gale.
Yeah.
He played 100 tests for West Indies. People forget that. And I think, personally, certainly in my team where I've got a lot of great batsmen, I want someone who can take away the game in a session right at the top. And Chris Gale's got a triple century, averages over 40 both home and away. I think he's a great start alongside Cook.
I agree with you on that. And Cook's debatable because I've got another Englishman over there. But I think my Englishman, because I have little frailties in my team, which I'll get to. Bishan, who are your openers?
My openers are the same as Rakib, and for the same reasons as well, because I think Chris Gale really deserves to take that opener spot. He's been exceptional, but because he's been so much more exceptional in T20 cricket across the world, you kind of forget how good he was in Test cricket.
Yeah.
He played 100 Test matches, and this is someone who struggled with the body throughout his career as well, and been so consistent. And like Rakib discussed earlier, he's in the Sehwag mold, can take the Test match away from you in a session. And you always want players like that, and who have proven ability. And Cook picks himself. There's no doubt Cook picks himself. But my second opener is Chris Gale.
Okay, I think we can take a fair decision that we're all agreeing on Gale. Just for the record, I've gone for Alex Stewart as an opener, just to add that little bit of experience, because he retired in 2003. And I was just thinking, if I have Alex Stewart with all his experience and calm and sedateness about him, Gale can go gung-ho at the other end. It'll be a good start to see that transpire. Let's go to the middle order then. Let's start with Rakib this time. Who's your 3, 4, 5, 6?
So I just want to, for point of clarity, I didn't pick players that didn't either have most of their careers in the 2000s or at least 10 years. So I didn't go for people like Lara and Stewart, even Graham Thorpe, who averages over 53 in the 2000s. Brilliant. I would have gone for him.
So
my middle order, 3 to 5 really, or 3 to 6, is Chanderpaul at number 3. Absolutely brilliant. Averages 50. Great all over the world. Then Joe Root, nearly 50, averages nearly 50 at number 4 in the place that he likes. Again, a great record all over the world. And then KP, I think my favorite English batsman of all time. Absolutely brilliant. I'll never forget that innings in India where he absolutely tore the heart out of our spinners. And after him, Stokes. And then it goes to the wicketkeepers.
No, that's a very solid 3, 4, 5, 6. And plenty of runs there. Harry, do you concur with that? Or do you have someone different?
You can hear me. I actually didn't go with Root. I've put Stokes in at 6. I know Root's been excellent, but for me, I wanted to try and squeeze the extra all-rounder in. I was a little bit, as we discussed Stokes and Holder already, I was quite hesitant as to which one you go with, because for me, I've only put those 3 West Indians in: Holder, Chanderpaul, and Lara.
Okay.
And I went with Lara.
Yeah. So there are 3, 4, 5.
My 3, 4, 5 is KP, Lara, and Chanderpaul, and then I've got Stokes in at 6.
Okay. So I think I have the same 3, which is KP, Chanderpaul, and Lara. But I have another West Indian, but I'll let Bishan finish before I shed my West Indian player, because he's a special.
It's almost like Rakib and I have discussed our 11s, but we haven't. My 3, 4, 5 is the same. I've got Chanderpaul, Root, and KP as well. I think it's really hard to pick a 11. I think a world 11 post 2000 without KP in it, because he's really another X-factor batsman. and play 100+ test matches, extremely successful. I would say England's best ever test batsman. I find it hard to not pick KP in a test 11, so KP is definitely got to be there. Root picks himself, I think, in my opinion, and Chandra Paul. I didn't pick Lara for the reason that he did play 50 test matches post 2000, it's true, as long as Badman's whole career. But I think he did his best work maybe a little bit before that. So I've left
I mean,
Lara
he got
out.
his 400 post the 2000, so we'll put that Lara in there as well. So I've gone for someone really underrated at 3, a man who I had a lot of respect for, and that's Ramnare Sarwan, simply because of that amazing innings he kind of shepherded with Chandra Paul, I think, against the Australians in 2003 in Port of Spain for that world record chase. So I think Sarwan was really, really good, especially in his first tour as well against the English in 2000. And he played Caddick in Gough and Mullally with absolute ease for a West Indian youngster coming in. I think he was pretty good. But then he, of course, doesn't rank anywhere close to, say, a KP or Chandra Paul or Lara. So we have to put those 3 in. Stokes would go in as, I'm guessing, the number 6 because we all have Stokes. But let's now talk about that bowlers, because those bowlers, I'm sure it's going to be English-centric, I'm guessing, because there's no Walsh, there's no Ambrose, and I'm sure no one's gone here picking a Merv Dillon. Vishen, you?
I actually don't have Stokes in my 11.
Okay.
So my 3, 4, 5 were Chandra Paul, Peterson, and Root. My number 6, actually, I've gone with the keeper straight away, and I wanted a full-time proper keeper. So I've gone with Matt Pryor, because I don't think either team has really had an exceptional keeper batsman in the last 20 years. And I think Pryor is probably the best you have. Due to a lack of resources, I think I've gone with Pryor as my keeper. And I think picking between Stokes and we shouldn't forget Flintoff, because he's arguably up there as England's best all-rounders along with Botham. So I didn't want to pick between Stokes and Flintoff, because leaving either out would be a disservice. And my personal favorite of the 3 is Holder. So I've picked Holder as my number 7 all-rounder.
All right, fair enough. Quickly, let's rush through this because we have 2 minutes left and there are a few protocols that we have to really meet. Harry, let's hear your bowlers before we come to Rakib as well, because I have a feeling Rakib and Vishen have secretly discussed this before even this podcast started. Harry, what's your 11 look like?
Broad and Anderson. Certainly Broad goes in, and I haven't had an opportunity to say it, but he's been defiant in that last test match. And for me, he's straight into the next test and doesn't miss another game this summer. With the other 3 rotating, they've had their injury problems. He hasn't, alas. And then I've also gone with Swan as the spinner. I think he's been excellent home and abroad. And then I've got Holder in as another all-rounder. So Holder and Stokes both playing, and Pryor in as the wicketkeeper with KP in the same team.
You can't really disagree with Holder, Broad, Anderson, and Swan. Pryor as well, really a great keeper. Rakib, do you echo those thoughts?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, mine is exactly the same. At number 6, I have Stokes. At number 7, I have Matt Pryor. And then at number 8, Jason Holder, then Anderson, Broad, and Swan. That's my full team. I had to get Jason Holder in there. Brilliant bowler. I think, sadly, West Indies, I think the next 20 years might be slightly different. But the last 20 years, it's sad to say that I couldn't pick, apart from Jason Holder, I couldn't pick a West Indies bowler. And I think the other interesting thing about this is there's not one actual fast bowler in that team, which tells you why both these teams have been poor in Test cricket over the last 20 years.
Or a leg spinner. I mean,
or a leg spinner. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so we normally overlook those spinners. But Harry, quickly, just a wrap proceedings here, your final thoughts on the team? Do you think?
I initially looked at this through the eyes of England versus West Indies in Test matches, and a couple of dark horses that I didn't put in the end. But Shea Hope has, after that Headingley Test, I'm always worried about him as a batsman, even though he's not performed so well in the series. And Marlon Samuels, he's got a really good record against England compared to the other teams. And I think that he goes under the radar. He's frustrated England in all 3 formats. And he's been a thorn in our balls, shall we say.
No, absolutely, for sure. Final words, Vishen. I mean, I think it's fair to say that we've all kind of concurred in the same all-time 11. We'll be doing plenty of these all-time 11s much more. But I'm sure you're happy with this one, considering you and Rakib have had the pick of the lot, shall we say?
My only difference in the bowlers, of the four frontline bowlers, I have Roach in there.
Okay.
I have Anderson, Broad, Swan, and because I didn't pick Stokes, I have one spot left, and I've given that spot to Roach.
Okay, fair enough. Just to really wrap proceedings here, I just want to ask you all, who's the first name which kind of came up on this list when you guys were doing this task? For me, it was Anderson, because I mean he's probably the best out of the lot, right?
Nah, for me, it was KP, definitely. Anderson, actually, if you look at Anderson, his record away from home is similar to Ashwin's. In fact, it's worse than Ashwin's.
Yeah.
I have a real issue with that. Whereas KP, man, he has incredible innings all over the world, and he's the kind of batsman that if someone watches him in cricket, they want to watch more Test cricket, and I think that's really important for the game.
Fair enough.
I'd go.
How do you?
So again, with England, West Indies, those players, Anderson, Broad, Cook, they pick themselves immediately. But if I look at that team and think, out of the last 20 years, who gets into that World 11, then KP's the one again who absolutely gets himself in there. And hopefully Stokes will earn himself a right. But I mean, he's got to be very, very good for the next 3 or 4 years to do that.
Yep, exactly. So let's just hope that the England-West Indies Test series ends on an absolute climatic, sensational day 5 sort of finish, because that's what we all want. And then there's, of course, lots of cricket after that, with Ireland playing that ODI series, Pakistan coming along as well, and then hopefully the IPL in September, which we'll talk about in the next podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much, Rakib, Harry, Bishan, for your time as ever, and more to come. Watch this space, guys. Thank you.
Thank you for having me on, guys.
Cheers. Appreciate it. Pleasure.
Take care, guys. Bye.
Bye.